We're going to do some passage in the Haggadah. Ask one question and answer it on a number of layers. Obviously, it's not all the answers. That would be impossible. But at least some of them. So this is the opening. The statement reading here is the opening of the answer. The child asked the 4 questions, and then we give him the answer.
So you're doing well.
Yeah. And as we've noted, the Mishnah tells us that the Haggadah, the answer is to be done masal b'ganai, beginning in a place of shame, a place of negativity, misayim b'shvach, going into a place of praise. And there are 2 versions as to where that shame starts and where the praise ends. But the first opinion is that it begins with slavery and ends with freedom. There's another opinion that it begins with idol worship and ends with Sinai, which is the second half of the Haggadah. Adam Yoev Ivri. We had occasion to discuss all of this. So this is the first answer. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. And God took us out of the Bir Chazaka with a strong arm of his right hand, an outstretched arm, strong hand, outstretched arm. So this is the answer essentially. We were slaves in Egypt, now we're out. So that's what we're celebrating. Now, why should I care? This is the child asking. So we tell him, had God not taken out our forefathers from Egypt, and us, and our children, and our grandchildren, we would all be slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. So this is the answer to the child, why you should care. Because it matters to you. Okay, so that's great, but why are we still sitting here? So then he says, maybe the child might ask, well, I know the story. Okay, great, so I know the story, right? I knew that. But then he says, even if we were all wise and knowledgeable, understanding, wise, we all know Torah. There's Chacham bin Adas there, by the way. Chachamim, Nevonim, Yoedim. Mitzvah we have a commandment to tell the story of the Exodus. And whoever increases in the story, it's praiseworthy. So this is the opening of our answer. We were slaves in Egypt. Had you not been there, had we not gone out, we would still be stuck, and therefore matters to you. Now, even if you know the story, we're commanded to tell the story because of what happened. This is the opening paragraph of the response to the child's 4 questions. And the question we're going to ask is, had God not taken us out when seemingly God promised to take us out anyway? God told Avram that he would be a slave, then we'd get out. So what do you mean had he not taken us out? He said he's going to put us in there. He said he's going to take us out.
It's bound to happen.
It's bound to happen. So and also, how is it possible that we would still be slaves? And Hashem would have failed on his promise, God forbid. So we wouldn't have been slaves. We couldn't have been slaves. God would have taken us out. There's no, had they not gone out, we would have gone out. Had they not gone out, the next generation would have gone out. But someone had to get out at one point, way before us, because the time limit is up. But before we get to answering that question, there's a very geshmaka piece on the Rabbi's Haggadah here. So I mentioned before, the Rabbi wrote the probably the only book that ever published, not transcripts of talks, but a work that he wrote himself, is a collection of teachings on the Haggadah, insights on the Haggadah, sources and insights, with his own insights. But as the Rebbe's writing is always very shorthand. It's not so, his speaking was much more elaborate and lucid, but his writing is much more shorthand, very precise wording. So it's a very geshmak, a nice piece. The Rebbe's Haggadah here. It's clear that Rebbe very much liked this Haggadah. He published it 2-3 times, maybe, and each time added a couple of paragraphs, things. So this is Rebbe's Haggadah. So he quotes the things that we would be slaves to Pharaoh. So Rebbe writes, Kamuvan, obviously, Ein Kavana. The intention of the Haggadah is not Lapare, so the Pharaoh should be Moshe that stood in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. We're not expecting a miraculous longevity that Pharaoh was still be alive. Ella rather, Shekol Malchim Mitzrayim, all the kings of Egypt, Nikro B'Shem Koli, were referred to in this general name as Pharaoh. It wasn't their actual name, it was a title. And therefore, Shem Koli Pharaoh, this general name called Pharaoh, that recites to Rashi as a source. So, when it says we be slaves to Pharaoh, not that Pharaoh, but to the title Pharaoh, whoever would have been the Pharaoh now.
The Egyptian monarch.
the Egyptian monarch, correct. Now, Fa'av should be Miyah Mishnah, V'Siddur Haggadah, even though in the times of the Mishnah, which is when the Haggadah begins to emerge, the text, the Siddur Haggadah, and then the later generations, that slowly compiled the Haggadah, as we talked about here, in another class, the history of the Haggadah. But by the time the Haggadah was compiled, and this text of Al-Mu'in was written, Kvar Batal Minigzeh, this minig is already done. They weren't called pharaohs anymore. The idea of pharaohs ended a long time ago, well before the writing of the Haggadah. And that's indeed what Abudraham asks. There's no more pharaoh back in the times of the writing of the Haggadah. Excuse me. Therefore, Hishmit Tevas Lefare b'nusach Haggadah. The Abudraham takes the word Lefare out of the Haggadah, and he writes, had God not taken out of forefathers, excuse me, then we would be slaves in Egypt, taking the word out to Pharaoh in Egypt, because Pharaoh didn't exist anymore. So the Rebbe has to justify our excuse me. The Rebbe has to now justify our version, which does say that we would be slaves to Pharaoh. Pharaoh stopped, the idea of a Pharaoh stopped being. One might suggest that in order to justify our version, Shabbatal, the reason why the custom of the monarchs of Egypt being called Pharaoh, the reason why it stopped is because with the exodus from Egypt, the position of Egypt as a superpower started to dissipate. So the reason why their customs, including the custom of calling their monarchs Pharaoh, stopped is because of the exodus. So had there not been an exodus, they might still have an actual Pharaoh. And therefore we can actually say we would be slaves to a Pharaoh in Egypt. After the Jewish people left Egypt, the descent began. The Egyptian power went up and down. They lost their superpower status, and it was up, down, better, worse, subjugated to Rome, not subjugated to Rome, etc. So they had Pharaoh, didn't have Pharaoh, did have a Pharaoh, didn't have a Pharaoh, but they no longer had that power anymore. And there were times when they were even conquered by other countries. But now he quotes Haggadah again. Had God not taken out of Egypt, it would remain in its full power and its full glory. And then he cites to a medrash the Harim Yaakov Shemoni Remez Lamed Reish Lamed. Kishi Yotzi Yisrael Mitzrayim, when the Jews left Egypt, Batal Malchus Mitzrayim, the Egyptian monarchy was dismantled. Because beforehand Pharaoh was a superpower who ruled the entire world. Out of respect to the fact that the Jewish people were in his country, and once they left, Pharaoh left, and therefore, had we not left Egypt, therefore, Kolani Muslim, all of the customs, Haggadah, and the customs and the ways, Hamlucha of the kingship would remain, and therefore, we can still say to Pharaoh in Egypt, because the idea of Pharaoh would have stayed. It's a beautiful little thing. You pass the tissues, please.
I mean, the Egyptian empire would exist until today.
That's right. That's what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
And then the verse says like this: we must rely on this whole reading in order to read the Haggadah, even if you take the word Lefare out. Why? We have to rely on this for the fact that we say, even according to Abudraham, that Abudraham took out the word to Pharaoh in Egypt, because there's no more pharaohs left. And it says we would have been slaves in Egypt without the word to Pharaoh. But he says you would still need to rely on this whole explanation that had we stayed there, their superpower would have stayed. Why? In order to say the words, to be slaves in Egypt. Because even though the kingship of Egypt went down. In other words, you're saying the name Pharaoh is gone, and therefore would have been Egypt without a Pharaoh. That's what Abudraham is saying. But why is Pharaoh gone? Because things changed. Well, things changed. There's no more kingship of Egypt either. So you still need, even according to you, Abudraham, which are taking out the word to Pharaoh, you still need to rely on the fact that had we not left, the monarch would have stayed. Otherwise, why would we still be in Egypt? Egypt is come and gone. Now, if the monarch is staying anyway, why not say it's staying with his customs and keep the word Pharaoh in the Haggadah? It's a beautiful little piece in Haggadah. Okay. Now let's get to our question, which is, why would we still be slaves if God already promised that he's going to take us out? This is the Ritva, classic Rishon commentary on the Haggadah. Many other commentaries have a very similar explanation. They just took the Ritva here. Yesh Makshim, those who ask, how is it possible to say how is it possible we would still be in Egypt? God already promised that the covenant that will be taken out at the end of this X time. It was unconditional. It wasn't like we had to earn it. If anything, we didn't deserve it, as we'll learn later. So where's the why would we still be there? God promised to take us out anyway. Okay, we'll skip the parentheses. So he says, the explanation of the passage is as follows. The word Mishnah here doesn't mean actual Mishnah like the way we read it as in part of the Talmud, but a passage. Had God not taken us out, as He promised our forefathers, and taken us out in His promise, had He not done that, the generation would have not been worthy of redemption. Because they learnt and adopted, they assimilated the customs of Egypt. The Kolshkin, much more so, would have completely assimilated into them. They're going forward, and we would never be redeemed. And we would be subjugated to them, if not as actual slaves, but as completely non-identifiable, in that we've completely assimilated to them.
But doesn't that run counter to...
Sorry?
Doesn't that run counter to the fact that they kept their dress and their language?
Very good question.
Isn't that this week? I remember.
Yeah. It's funny. It's true. It's a good question.
It can't be complete.
The Medrash says that they kept their language, clothing, and names. That is to say that they kept their own individual identity. This is not just a question of Ritva. I mean, there are other sources earlier that said that they actually, for example, the Medrash says that the angels asked, why are they getting redeemed? They serve idols and they serve idols. As if to say the Jews are also serving idols there. So it seemed like, even with their complete assimilation, in some respect, they still had their identity.
20%.
Which is why only 20% left, and 80% stayed behind.
We have that situation today in North America. Basically, we have a larger percentage of Jews
Assimilation than
who
them.
wouldn't even recognize.
Unfortunately. So maybe the Medrash says that they kept their identity. He's talking about that 20%. Maybe.
Yeah.
Whereas here we're talking about the other 80.
We're gone.
I don't know.
God would have sent us Shalia. It would have been a very different story.
It would have been our only
It
option.
wouldn't have been there 210 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you even have it like in Europe, for example, you have people that were Yiddish and they weren't believers.
They didn't last very long.
No, I know, but that's such a concept. You have people kept their names and their language.
The reality is,
culture, but
the reality is that
it's possible
throughout all of our history, the only cultures have come and gone, Jewish cultures included. The only identifiably Jewish item which is associated with Jewish people that has survived all the millennia and all the different cultures is Torah.
Of course.
So, I mean, the Jewish culture of Europe is not the same thing as the Jewish culture of Spain or Morocco or anything else. So,
I'm just going to explain it's possible to keep a
Jewish identity even without Torah. But it doesn't last very long, is what I'm saying.
That's why Shem to redeem them.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Ritva is basically saying, just on a very simple reading, that indeed, we're thanking Hashem for keeping His promise, because we didn't deserve it. That simple. In other words, you're right. You're asking, why would we still be there? You promised to take us out. That's true. And we're thanking Him for keeping the promise, even though we didn't deserve it. That's it. It's as simple as that. And then he goes on to say, if we have to thank Him, etc. Okay, so that's the basic answer. Now, we get to a more elaborate answer. I'm going to try to move through this as quick as possible. We're running out of time.
It's such a beautiful answer, though. Right? It's like a parent who punishes a child, and it hurts him so much that he can't leave him in his room for too long.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
It hurts him more than it does the child.
We're going to get to that, God willing. Yeah. Okay, so the Bam Loyes. It's a little more elaborate. Okay, I'm going to read and translate because he explains it well. I don't know. If you're going to come back to me and ask. Considering the fact that God promised to Abraham at the covenant, and told him the entire exile will only last 400 years, and afterwards you will go out with great wealth. This is God's promise. So how is it that we say that God not taken our forefathers out of Egypt, us, our children, our grandchildren, would still be slaves in Egypt? The same question. Ella, Ilu, so the answer is like this. We could have gone out, but it didn't have to be through Hashem. So God could have kept His promise, but it didn't have to be in the way it was. So you can explain. And rather, had the Exodus not been through God Himself, there'd be no option for us to really truly escape. Meaning we could have gone out, but not for real, as he's going to explain. A person who's locked, who's in jail, prison, Mishtacher can be released in the following three fashions. Three options for how he can get out. Either he overpowers his captors and battles them, wins them. Option one. Or he figures out how to sneak out of the jail. Option two. Three, or the captor itself, has mercy upon him, and releases him. So he overpowers his enemies, he sneaks away from his enemies, or his enemies have mercy on him. Keeping God out of the picture, those are options. Why does he have mercy on him? Because he sees he served him 30-40 years. He decides to be benevolent to him. And allows him to go wherever he wants. So those are the three options: overpowering, sneak out, or mercy from the captors. Now the Ilu Khan, but here it's Bnei Yisrael, respect the Jewish people leaving Egypt. It wasn't possible. These three options were not possible. Either of these three. Why? Because they were denigrated and in a lowly state physically. They were born and grew up in slavery. They were weak in power and in strategy and in mindset. They had no capacity to fight Egypt. So option one's off the table. Because it says, from the moment they were born, they were in a lowly state and subject to their commands right from birth. So their mentality and their physical power did not leave them the option of one to overpower. And they were completely scared of them. For example, when a lion goes into a pen of sheep, even if they had 100,000 sheep, the sheep do not bound together and unionize to fight the lion. If they all 100,000 sheep, they can overpower a lion. What happens? Each one runs because they're not in the mentality of fighting. They run for survival. That's what the Jewish people. That's what they were like in Egypt. They didn't have the mental capacity or the strength to bound together. All 600,000 to fight the Egyptians. They were like sheep before a lion. And specifically, considering the fact their sorcery, the Egyptian sorcery, was very powerful and intense. The Jews couldn't escape them spiritually from the sorcery.
Rabbi, just to open a parenthesis is very important. I thought about that entirely, and as a result, the final solution, the way it was done, was to remove the
instill fear first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So instill fear, intimidation, no profession.
Which is why it's so Bibor.
You're not going to school. You're not having any type of contact with anybody else in society.
First, take away their mental capacity to fight back.
Exactly.
In Sobibor.
And this is exactly what the Egyptians, by the way, did it subconsciously.
100%.
He did it with precision that was.
It's possible the Egyptians did it consciously too.
Only for Al Kiddush Hashem, for our people who didn't. When
100%.
non-Jews say, well, why did they fight back? They never. Well, they don't.
Not understanding is psychology of it.
Exactly. So when you denigrate a child to the degree that you do, that child.
You remove the capacity to fight back.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's funny because there was a camp called Sobibor,
exactly,
which had Russian soldiers.
Yes.
Now soldiers are not born in mentally. They're actually trained to fight back, even if it means I die. So survival mode's not there, but it's fight back mode, and they actually did fight back, and they were successful. Many of them, including Jews who got out with them.
And Levi was exactly the same thing. He then what he had to do is incorporate within the psyche of the people the confidence back, and that's how he was
100%.
able to win that.
That's right.
And that was an amazing thing. But I closed the parenthesis because we couldn't stop here and not have the Al Kiddush Hashem for those who went that way.
Yeah. So this strategy has repeated itself, unfortunately. So it explains, even if they were much more than the 600,000 they actually were, they still wouldn't be able to fight back the Egyptians because of their mental state. So that's option number 1. Fighting back, not possible. Option 2, the idea that Pharaoh would, that the captors would have mercy.
No.
Or he's
That was option 3.
They could sneak
Okay, but he
out.
goes to option 3 first. I don't know why. Anyway, the second option, which you're right before was the third option, wasn't there. The idea that Pharaoh would have mercy on them and let them out. Excuse me. Because we see the Parsha Shmois in the sections of the Torah describing the oppression. To what degree Pharaoh was wicked and an anti-Semite, hater of Jews. I don't know if the term anti-Semite existed then. But he was a hater of Jews, and therefore that was not a possibility that he would have mercy on them. The idea of sneaking out also wasn't possible. Refugee. All gates of Egypt were locked. With all kinds of sorcery, not just physically locked with physical armies, but they had sorcery blocking the exits. Had a sorcery alarm system. Anybody who tried to escape, they had a sorcerous mechanism to inform them anytime someone tried to escape.
Electric fences.
Yeah, the equivalent to regular electric fences or alarm systems. When the moment you tried to escape, they were informed.
Dogs also
They had dogs at the gate. That was one of the things that the guard dogs didn't bark, right?
Some tried to escape. And
Yeah,
they were
right.
killed.
And they were killed. Yeah.
We also have the Shevet Menashe did escape if you had 200,000 actually.
Yeah,
They fought against the police team, so maybe that was an anomaly, but the rest of people were not
Yeah.
like that.
Certainly not the masses of people couldn't do that.
Because the losses were probably very high with the police team, if you had 200,000 were killed, so I mean, people did escape, but maybe
That was the anomaly. So we were.
Yeah, exactly. The majority did not.
Yeah.
We should have mentioned, by the way,
And if
that
they escaped, how would they survive even if they
no, they
Escape.
fought against the police team. They wanted to go to Israel.
They went back to Canaan.
They'd have to cross the
Yeah, they were ready to fight. Yeah, no, they were ready.
Yeah.
No, they went through the police.
No. Sinai was around.
Round.
They went
The Jews went in a massive detour. Anyway.
They went along
It's
the
a long
coast.
journey.
The north.
No, it's very
No,
very
it's
fast.
not that
Road.
long.
North
When
Road.
you look at the map, it's not
It's
that
very
long.
very close.
It's
To go
from
Egypt
Aqaba.
no, not Aqaba, go along the Galilee.
Go along the.
in Israel borders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go along the water
And the reason they didn't do it
today where the dam is.
yeah, they would go along the Mediterranean. The reason they didn't do it because the Philistines kept the bodies there left on the
Left
ground.
them.
Yes.
So to frighten the Jews, that's why Moshe told by
Went the
Hashem,
other way.
go through the roundabout way from through Sinai and then go back to the west through Jordan. But the
Yeah.
original was to go through. It's only 11 days journey to go.
Okay, let's continue because we're running out of
We
time.
left it. It didn't discuss that.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't discuss that. At any rate, so my lives we saw before they had sorcery. Okay, Ravad calls it, besides for all of this, even if they had the capacity to quickly run out and escape, after Cain, and here's the interesting chiddush, that even if they were to get away with all this, and let's say they did get out in one of these 3 ways, fighting, escaping, or mercy. After Cain, nevertheless, we still wouldn't be free from them. Why? Until this very day, when the Egyptians would see us, or our children, or our grandchildren, they would say us, you were slaves to us, and you got out. You really belong to us. So, had we got out in any of these ways, we would always owe the Egyptians. You escaped, you weren't supposed to. You're still our enemy, you fought us, we should fight you back. And the worst of all, I had mercy on you and let you out. So we wouldn't really be free from them. As people look at the Indians, you know what this is a reference to? I'm not sure. What's he making reference to? The Indians?
Indians, you mean Aboriginals?
No, India.
No.
Oh,
India, like Haidu, India. I don't know what he's referring to. That's what it seems like he's talking about. He's making a reference to something of the time, I'm not sure. And even if thousands of years passed, we would never lose the title, the shame of you're really a slave. But you got out. And that's why this is called we would still be subject to Pare till today. Not that we would literally be slaves, but we would have the shame and title of slaves, even if we got out. So this is a nice answer. And then he goes on to say, and therefore Hashem had to take us out. When Hashem taking us out, if there's ever a response, you really belong to us, the answer is, no we don't. We belong to Hashem. So even if God kept his promise, and he made some other way through us to get out, right? So we would still be subject to Pharaoh, at least in title or in shame. And therefore when Haggadah reads that had God not taken us out, we would still be there, It means to say, had God not taken us out, but had we gone out some other way, we would still be slaves.
That's why Moses' argument is so powerful. When God wanted to destroy the Israelites in the desert,
Yeah.
he said to erase them. He said, erase my name. What will people say?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay, so 2 answers so far. The simple one from the Ritva is, we're thanking Hashem for keeping His promise. It's a simple answer from the Ritva. The second answer from the Amlois, which we saw, is a psychological answer. That we would still psychologically be subject to Pharaoh had God not taken us out, even if we had gotten out in one of the other ways, escaping, fighting, or being let out in mercy. Now finally the Rebbe's answer.
I just want to mention, Meshubad doesn't only mean slave, it means obligated. For example, if someone takes a loan as property,
That's right.
Meshubad.
Good point, yes, I want to mention that.
That's what gives the explanation.
Right. Meshubad,
Even
that's right.
if Pharaoh would redeem us, we'd always have to give thanks how much to him, and saying how much
Right,
to Hashem.
Meshubad doesn't necessarily only, you're right.
Yeah.
The word Meshubad,
That's
which we
the
described here
word
as persecutors or subjugated,
Obligated.
can also mean I owe you.
Oh yeah.
Like I owe you.
That's right.
In legal matters, you would say, for example, a property that has a lien on a loan is called Meshubad.
Meshubad, yeah.
That property is subject to the loan. So we would be subject to them even if we weren't
If
under them.
I loan, I take the land, so that's
A lien.
A lien, just like a lien. If there's a lien on a house, you call it Meshubad. So we would be Meshubad in that sense. That's a good point, correct.
Yeah, that's the way to explain it. Yeah.
Okay. So next page of the Rebbe's explanation. There's a medrash the Rebbe cites to which reads like this. This comes from volume 17 in the Rebbe's Likutei Sichos. Mentioned Likutei Sichos as a collection of the Rebbe's talks that he edited over years, and there's 39 volumes. So in volume 17 is a long talk the Rebbe has explaining the Haggadah, and the Rebbe has a mahalach. The Rebbe has a method of explaining the Haggadah and answers some 15, 16 questions using this one path. One of the questions is, why would we still be slaves? And the mahalach, the method that the Rebbe goes with is this idea, and it's a Hasidic idea actually, that the exodus from Egypt is an experience of what's known in Kabbalah as above to below. In other words, whereas Tishrei, the month of Tishrei, is our connection to Hashem, we're doing Teshuvah, we're climbing the rungs, of getting higher and higher till the pinnacle of Yom Kippur, that's Simchas Torah. Pesach is the reverse. Right? The prophet calls it Leidas Am Yisrael, the birth of the Jewish people, the exodus from Egypt. Birth is not by your choice, you didn't earn it. It happens to you. So Egypt, the exodus from Egypt happened to the Jewish people. That is to say, it's a celebration of Hashem's irrevocable choice of us. Not that we did anything to earn it. On the contrary.
Oh, we did something. Yeah,
Sorry?
We did the Bris Milah and the Korban Pesach.
This is why Moshe is complaining. They have no mitzvahs. You want to choose them without a mitzvah. It actually supports the idea. In other words, they were so gone, they had no mitzvah to say that you deserve it. So Hashem gave them the mitzvah. But it's again Hashem giving it to them.
But they had to do it though.
100%. But the primary, right, the way the Rambam writes it is V'keraf Tonu, when the Rambam describes that the Haggadah should be done where it begins with shame and ends in glory, he describes it as you began as idol worship. It doesn't say and we conclude with and we discovered Hashem. No. But you, Hashem, brought us close. And that's the theme of Pesach. Hashem taking the Jewish people. As opposed to, of course, everything is a bit of both. But the primary of Tishrei is our climbing to come closer to Hashem, and the primary Pesach is Hashem's choice of us. And therefore, the Rebbe cites the following medrash. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem tells Avram Avinu, Kol Yomim, all the days, that the Jewish people will be involved in the study of Torah and sacrifices, serving me. They will be saved from any oppressors. Ella, but there's going to come a time when your children that will not serve me, not have sacrifices, but generally speaking, not serve me. So the cleansing process that the Jewish people will need to go through, which they would ordinarily get through serving me, it has to be done some other way. So what do you prefer? Hashem asks Avram Avinu. That your children should be persecuted, Begehenim, in hell, life after death. Excuse me. Or persecuted by other nations. Options. your children will have to go through cleansing in hell, life after death, or in this life, in this physical world, by other nations.
That means
Not a nice choice.
Imagine that choice.
Persecution means that the Malchus is hell on earth.
That's correct.
All the persecution we suffer, that's the Gehenna on earth.
Hell on earth, absolutely.
Okay.
That's
So-
how we look at it. So the people look at persecution like, some kind of random thing or like a
Yeah.
negative thing. No, on the contrary. it's
We're going to explain all this in a second. We're getting to this. This is why we're quoting this.
Isn't it the same?
Let's explain and learn. Let's explain and learn. Let's learn and explain. This is why we're quoting it, right? Let's learn.
Okay.
Amar Chanina ben Papa. Rav Chanina ben Papa says, Avraham bar Eloi Malchus. Avraham chose persecution on this earth rather than hell and life after death. Amar Loi, and therefore Avraham told Hashem, the master of the universe, Ishtabdu Malchus, let them get cleansed through persecution by other nations, rather than go to hell. So what's the point that we're making from here? Is that the persecution in Egypt was actually a cleansing process in the same way hell is a cleansing process before the soul can go into heaven. Right? Especially in Chassidus, the way we understand reward and punishment is not just tit for tat. You did this, so we're going to slap you on the wrist. But rather, through sin and through other things, a person accumulates dirt, metaphorically, and it needs to be cleansed. The shirt doesn't have a good time when it goes into the washing machine. And the more dirt the shirt has, the more painful the cleansing the shirt has to go through.
Rabbi, we have to be very careful with Holocaust survivors when we say that.
100%.
Because the sensitivity here is absolutely incredible, because they'll say, God remembers people for 1,000 generations. In other words, four generations, one person of 4 generations for compassion for 1,000.
Actually, the truth is that the other way, that there's another angle to this when we talk about the Holocaust.
We have to be very careful.
Well, the truth is,
even this,
I can't remember who said it. I think it was the Klausenberger Rebbe. I think it was the Klausenberger Rebbe who said that the number is a passport straight to Gan Eden. Doesn't matter what the Jew didn't do. No, so whatever, if there's ever a hell on earth.
Exactly.
So, look, we're gonna, we'll leave this aside for a moment, but let's just put it this way:
But we have to be very careful.
100%, 100%. But we still need to learn, right?
Exactly.
So, but in terms of that, we'll just say this.
We have to put it,
For now, we'll just say this:
Yeah.
the way why Hashem does things, Hashem doesn't explain here why cleansing has to be painful. Doesn't. He just says it as a fact. And on the contrary, a Jew can, and therefore should say, why do I have to get this kind of cleansing? You couldn't figure out some other way to do it that can't be so painful. And therefore, God forbid, not justifying. Hashem doesn't need lawyers. He doesn't need me to justify his actions. But nonetheless, we're still learning what it has to say.
In the future, we're going to understand what happened.
No,
I don't know about that either.
No.
Let's just leave this for now.
Yeah, but you're
Okay.
100% right.
So, this is the Medrash. And therefore the Medrash is like this. What we see from the Medrash here is that the exodus from Egypt is that the persecution in Egypt is a cleansing. Now, if that's the case, and the Jews, as we just learned earlier, were not cleansed. Many of them were still they were serving idol worship, as we learned. They were assimilated. So, if we're going to go with the natural order of things, where the Jews need to get cleansed in Egypt, then maybe they should have been in Egypt much longer. If this is what it is, if it's cleansing, clearly they're not cleansed yet. If the verse is like this, therefore we say, had God not taken the Jews out of Egypt, our forefathers, us, our children and grandchildren, would still be slaves in Egypt. Had God not decided to take us out, breaking the rules of the system, the slavery in Egypt would have lasted to the point that the Jews would have been fully cleansed. In other words, the system that Hashem set up is that Egypt cleanses. Okay, are they cleansed yet? No, stay.
Longer in the washing machine.
Longer in the washing machine.
We have 400 years.
But therefore, 1 second, we're not done yet. We're not done yet. We have to be. We know that, right? That's the question we opened up with. So let's learn. Until we finally reach the final exile, a final redemption where we're fully cleansed. Now, what about the 400 years? So let's look in the footnote 74, which is the left column there. Even though they were promised that 400 years is the max, and the fourth generation would return to Israel, This is what Avram was promised. That was our opening question. So what do you mean when you say that had we followed the system of cleansing, they would stay in Egypt longer, or forever, until the redemption? So it says like this: Lulish HaKadosh Baruch Hu Haitzim. Had God not taken them out against their will, mitzat tivam, because of their nature, because of the Jewish people's nature, which the Jewish people, he's quoting a verse now, said, there's a verse later describing the laws of slavery, in which the slave says, I love my master, I want to become a slave. In other words, a slave can get into the point of the mentality of slavery, where even when he's told, you can go free, he says, no, I want to stay. He refuses. And therefore, because how much more so? So first of all, by nature, we should have stayed because we weren't ready to leave. Neither because we were cleansed, nor because we were mentally ready to go. And moreover, even had God kept his promise and taken us out, the Jewish people cried. B'nai Yisrael, they cried. When they said, we remember that which the free food we got in Egypt. They were slaves, but they considered it free because of their mentality, and that their whole life was dependent on their masters. Whatever the master gave them was great, and if it was left to their choice, they would have went back. So it's not just that God took us out, but kept us out against our will, against our nature. The Kama Pratim Amru, and they even said many details. Let's turn around on heels, get back. When they were stuck at the ocean. And Hine, therefore, had God not taken us out, Hayu, then, Al Piteva, by nature, Gam Oisim came, they would actually do it. Vishav Mitzrayim, go back to Egypt. And we would remain slaves in Egypt until we got that cleansing. So by Hashem's choice, He broke the system and said, I choose you, Jewish people, even though you want to go back, even though you don't want me, even though maybe you're not ready for it, I'm taking you anyway.
Is this all of them want to go back?
Sure. The Jewish people declared a number of times they want to go back.
Even though
Not Levi, no, not Levi, the women.
And Rebbe makes note of the fact that later in the prophets, there are Jews who actually go back to Egypt against the prophet's words in Jeremiah. How many hundreds of years is that after Egypt? And they still want to go back. So what Rebbe is telling us is that the state of the Jewish people at the Exodus was so far removed from leaving, from serving Hashem, from being a people that's sole reliance is God alone. They were by nature they were stuck in the right. They were one level away from being stuck forever, right? So by nature and of their own volition, they would have chose to go down to that lower level. So when we say had God not taken us out, it's God had God not taken us out, then we would have maybe gone out, but we went right back.
God and kept us out.
And kept us out.
Take
us out and keep us out.
Yeah, that's important. Keep us out.
We had to walk for 40 years to make sure we didn't go back.
Sorry?
New
To make
generation.
sure we didn't go back.
That's right.
This route we took.
That's right. Now let's conclude this. And this is the Teichen Ha'inyan from Golas Yitzis Mitzrayim. And this is the message and the idea of the exile and the exodus from Egypt. On an external level, the way the system of the world is, say there's Shtashlos, Kabbalistic language for the system of nature, including the spiritual system of nature. The idea of God taking us out in the outstretched arm is against judgment. That is to say, the system says, 1 second, what outstretched arm you're pulling the Jews against? There's a structure. You can't just leave. Even from, in other words, God's system itself says to God, what are you doing? What are you taking them out for? Is das given and an oifen as wir wollten geblieben noch ein Nega. Therefore, nature said, had they stayed for one moment in Mitzrayim, wollten nicht nigel geworden. They wouldn't have been redeemed had they stayed 1 minute. Besides their madrega, because of their level, they were not ready or worthy of the Exodus. Ach Esav Yaakov, quoting the verse that Yaakov and Esav are brothers. That is to say, Jew, non-Jew, behaving the same way. And the Medrash says, Halalo Evdim, Halalo Evdim. The Egyptians are serving idols and the Jews are serving idols. They don't deserve to go. That's the external truth. That's the way the system of nature says. The system of nature says you don't deserve, you don't get. But if you look a little deeper about Mityas and the deeper truth beyond the system of nature, Kuntas Matzmusa Yisbarach. The very essence of Hashem says, I choose the Jew. They deserve, they don't deserve, doesn't matter. He may be blessed. In his free choice, his Baricher chooses Neshamas Yisrael, the Jewish people's soul. Because the Jew and God are essentially one. And to quote from another verse, to switch for another nation I can't. Deserving, not deserving, doesn't matter. And this is the deep message from the Hasidic perspective of the whole Haggadah. That the whole message of the Night of Seder is, and notwithstanding the fact that you don't deserve it, Hashem still chooses you.
But they're suffering. That's
something. And you can go claim. You can take the complaints to the Eibishter from till tomorrow.
That's part of the deal. You get redeemed, but that's the price to pay.
It's so much deeper than that. It's not. I want to understand something here. It's not a tit for tat situation.
No.
That's not how the Eibishter operates.
No, of course not.
That's childish.
It's a cheshbon.
The Eibishter is much more mature than that. Even the cheshbon. We're talking about something which is much, much deeper than this. You're talking about it's deeper than the essential connection that a father has to a son. A father and a son, the father folds his arm and says, we made a deal. That's not the way a father treats his child, even if he deserves all these things. And that's the point here. In other words, there's a system, Taka, that father sets up rules, you break the rules, you get punished. But the same father says, I can't do it. And that's what's happening here. It's so much deeper than that.
He does do it, though.
It's so much deeper than that. But you need to recognize a deeper truth here. That your connection to Hashem goes deeper than all of this. And therefore, your service of Hashem is not for you to earn your Judaism. You don't earn your Judaism. That's the point of the Seder. Your Judaism is granted to you because you are an essential choice of Hashem. Period. End of story. This way, to quote the Medrash that he just said here. 1 second. This way, that way, you cannot replace the Jew. Doesn't matter what happens, where you go, when you go. That's the celebration of the Seder night. And therefore, now that you have been chosen as a Jew, it's what your choice is to live that way. That's the choice, not to earn your Judaism. That's been granted to you. No, your latest Am Yisrael, Jewish people were born that way. Al kor chatachai, you were born against your will. We were born as Jews against our will. And that's the point of Eloi Haitzak Baruch Misham. We would still be there. We would still be there because it's not about us. It's not because we want to leave. We didn't want to. We would have stayed, and maybe even deserved to stay. But Hashem says, I take you out anyway, because I cannot exchange the Jewish people for anybody else.
Actually,
Rabbi,